Yeah, this is going to be a review or a recap of session 2 of Vaesen. I had my 3 players return, and they're playing Niklas, who is a occultist, Hugo, who is a writer, and Goran, who's a retired naval officer and police officer from a nearby city. We started off the session. They were in Castle Gillenkreutz, and they had a little chat with Elsa Larsen, who's a journalist from the Uppsala Gazette, and they did some talked to her a little bit. Just it was a little bit of a recap for them too. So learning about Linnea Elfklint and how she's at the asylum, and then she's one of the last known names attached to Castle Gillenkreutz, which is the records for Castle Gillenkreutz are pretty sparse, according to Elsa. They did some scene with each other, some role play to recover some of the conditions they suffered at the hands of the ghost of Lars Berg in the previous session. And during that time, they kind of all hunkered down in the library. They got the fireplace roaring because they're all frozen from his blast, getting hit with that blast of cold and wind. And they're pretty battered, having been the wind like sent them through the overgrown garden, and they got torn up with thorns and stuff. So they're recovering there. While they're doing that, Algot recovers from his attack that happened in the previous session at the hands of the ghost. He has no memory of what happened to him. He did not see the ghost, and he cannot see the ghost. So they recover from that with the plan of the next morning to go to the asylum to talk to Linnea. The night passes rather uneventfully. Each of the characters kind of doing their own thing. Notably, Hugo is journaling, which he does every day. And they awake the next morning, and Algot's back to doing his thing, and he serves them a meager breakfast, and they leave for the asylum. One thing of note is that they left the watch of Lars Berg that they'd recovered in the previous session. They left that in the library hidden amongst the books because they felt it might be unsafe to bring it with them outside of the castle. They go to the asylum. Goran also brings the society ledger that they found in the previous session with them as well. So then they go to the asylum. They're granted admittance. They have to meet with a doctor, Niklas Fried. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm going to butcher like all these Scandinavian names, so I apologize if anybody takes offense to that, but that's how it is. So they meet with Niklas Fried, and he is very open to them visiting with Linnea. He's a good-natured man. And he does tell them that Linnea he doesn't remember the last time she ever had a guest or a visitor come see her, so maybe it would do her some good. He just cautions them not to get her worked up. So they go and visit Linnea in her room, and they get taken through the asylum, and it's in some areas, in a lot of the areas, it's almost like a house of horrors thing. Not that the people are mistreated, but it's just filled with all these crazy people. And obviously this is 19th century, so like the treatment for those folks wasn't, state of the art. So it really was like they can hear people howling and screeching, and there's people that are, straight jacketed. And if you picture the asylum scene from the Dracula movie, Bram Stoker's Dracula, is kind of like that on a larger scale. But they end up going in to see Linnea, and she's in her own room. She's in a little better off than a lot of the patients there. She's this old woman. She's sitting in a chair looking out the window, and on her windowsill are all these potted plants, and the flowers in them are like full bloom. They're beautiful. And and she's holding her rosary with a cross, and the orderly tells her that she has guests and she's willing to talk to them. And so they have this meeting with Linnea, and in the meeting, I had a lot of fun playing Linnea. I didn't go into it with a huge plan on how to play her, but the idea and inspiration I took was from, if you've ever seen the movie, The Spiderwick Chronicles, and I don't remember the woman's name, but they go and visit her, and she's like, I don't know, she's in an asylum, she's in a home, and that's the inspiration I got. So that's a great movie. Tony DiTerlizzi's Spiderwick Chronicles is awesome. And actually kind of Vaesen-like in a way, I think. But that's the inspiration I had for her. And one of my players, my friend Matt, actually pointed that out, that it reminded him of her. So I must have done a halfway decent job of portraying that. But they talk to her, and she's very cryptic, and it's not intentional. Like, her memory fades in and out, and she talks about like the Vaesen and how she's seen all of the characters before. She saw them in her dreams and kind of knew that they would come, and that they're needed and that they're special because they have the sight and that they can see Vaesen. And that's kind of like one of their first confirmations that, that something's going on. And she keeps making reference to something is coming, but she doesn't know what it is. She's not purposely hiding information from the characters. She just has this feeling that something is coming, and because of her memory and her condition, she has a hard time really articulating what that is. But I think the characters and the players did get some information out of it. One of the things that they learned about when they ask about Lars Berg and his connection, and she tells them that they thought he was a friend, like the society which she belonged to thought he was a friend, and he turned out not to be, and he was trying to steal records and books from them. And he was a great gardener, and he made this terrific rose bush and all this stuff. But he turned out to be a betrayer to them, and they didn't mean to kill him, but when they were trying to get their stuff back and stop him, he was killed. So they talked to her for quite a while, and they ask about getting other information about the ghosts. They tell them all about Lars and how he's still haunting the Castle Gillenkreutz. So she points to her nightstand where Hugo goes in and finds this little handwritten journal of hers, and they take that because it's looking at it real quick. It got a lot of like gibberish in it, but then there's also stuff like specific like Vaesen. There's like pictures drawn with names and stuff. And while they're doing that, Goran, he notices, he like catches movement out of the corner of his eye and looking out the window. And I wish I had, shows you how prepared I am. He sees a creature. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I meant to have this marked off so I could just bang it out and show you too. This is an awesome book. It was actually, from what I understand, the inspiration for the game Vaesen, and it's all about Vaesen. Really good book. Oh, come on. Yeah, I meant to mark this off so I could just like a pro show this picture, but I'm not a pro, so this is what we get, me fumbling through a book. Oh, yeah, this guy. So you see this guy right here, and he is, he's in the window and he's tending the flowers. Isn't that a great illustration? It's awesome. One of the things that attracted me to Vaesen was the artwork. But they see that guy, and then all the rest of the characters also see him, and he kind of like realizes that they can see him, and he stops what he's doing, looks at them for a little bit, for a second, and then scampers off like really fast. And he's small, like he's the size of a rat. And Linnea obviously knows that they can also see him, and she starts talking about him and how his name is Nos, and that he tends the flowers, but he'll do it for milk. He has to have his milk, and that kind of confused creeped the players out, I think, a little bit, because they weren't sure what milk she was referring to. And it turns out that the orderly, when he brings Linnea her lunch, he always brings 2 glasses of milk because she wants it. The orderly has no idea why. But so they learn that. They also learn that that particular Vaesen, because there's actually a picture of him in Linnea's journal, is a Vetir, which I probably butchered that name, but that's what he is. So they don't know a lot of information about him, but they kind of, through the role play and the scene, figure out what he is. His name's actually written next to his picture in the book. So, but he tends the flowers in Linnea's window. So they also, I think that kind of showed too that not all Vaesen are evil. And that's how they're portrayed in the book. They're not all evil. A lot of them, I think, aren't. Like, it's just the circumstances makes them fight back against the encroaching industrialization of the setting and stuff. Really kind of a cool concept. They end up leaving after a while. And, excuse me, as they're leaving, they're getting in their coach, they're leaving, they notice a man across the street, and he's trying to like remain inconspicuous. He's reading a newspaper, the Uppsala Gazette, but it is quite blatant that he is watching the asylum. And one of the things they did learn from Linnea was that Lars Berg was a member of another group called the Rosenbergers. They don't know anything about them, but they know that he was a member of that group. So they're kind of putting things together as far as like, well, maybe somebody is watching her, or definitely somebody watching the asylum. So they get that, but there's no other, the man doesn't approach them and they don't approach him. So they return to Castle Gillenkreutz. They also learn through some research and study and talking to Linnea that salt circles and stuff will help protect them from ghosts, and so will burning sage will help fend off the spirit a little bit. So they pick up some of that stuff on their way back to the castle, along with medical supplies, because they realize after being banged up that they can get hurt, so they need medical supplies. So they grab some of that stuff and return. When they go back, they go to the library again and they start digging deeper, and Niklas does find a more detailed book on ghosts than Hugo found, and it kind of reinforces a lot of the things that they'd suspected about ghosts being either around for vengeance or attached to an object. And they get the impression that Lars is a little of both. He's here for vengeance, he wants Linnea dead, and they think he's attached to the pocket watch that Hugo took possession of, because that thing is ice cold. Like, it seems different. Whoop, hope if I didn't knock the camera over. So they do their research, and Goran is spending time searching through the ledger on society members, and he did find a couple entries that showed that society members were killed by Rosenbergers, it says, under cause of death. And Hugo spends time going through Linnea's journal. And they also spend this time with Niklas questioning the others about having the sight and how they got it. And the characters divulge a little bit of their backstory on how that happened. And Elsa Larsen returns for her promised tour of the castle. During the tour, they're on the 3rd floor. They're taking her to show her one of the towers, and they round the corner in this hallway, and suddenly they're just engulfed in darkness. They cannot see anything, and losing their sight suddenly like that is very confusing. And they spend a moment like fumbling around trying to find each other in the dark, and they can hear Elsa like crying out for help that she can't see. But every time, like, her voice is getting further and further and further away. And finally they bumble into each other, and Goran lights a match, which I described as just kind of peeling back the darkness ever so slightly, like a kid under a blanket with a candle. And they realize Elsa is not there. So they push on through the darkness and eventually clear it, and they're looking for her. And at the end of the hallway, there's a window and through the moonlight, they have a good view that the window overlooks the garden. And in the garden, they see Elsa out there, and she is wrapped up in these massive vines that are holding her 10 feet off the ground in the garden. So they quickly rush out there to help her. And they know that, the impression I got was that they knew that they had to confront Lars with what they've learned for information. So they go in, and as they're trying to get through the garden, in the previous session, they've been described as being overgrown, has been tended in a lot of years. And now it's like actively rising up to block their way. And they made this connection earlier because in the first session they had where the vines come in the foyer, that they're like, oh, what was that all about? And they talked about it in this session. And they made that connection that, well, Lars was the gardener. Maybe that's him affecting the vines around the castle. And that was absolutely true. That was what was happening. So he's doing it now, trying to block them from getting to Elsa. Goran is leading the way with his saber, and he's trying to hack his way through, and he's not super successful, but he's able to eventually do it. But he gets pretty battered in the process. So he enters the clearing, and that clearing is where they also found the body of Lars Berg. So Goran's trying to hack the vine down that's holding Elsa, and they realize it's not a single vine. It's like this, all the thorn bushes had twisted into like these big vines, into one big vine, like a mooring line on a ship. And this was really cool. Like, I didn't do this on purpose. I'd like to say I did, but I used that description. And with Goran's backstory, as his first contact with Vaesen was like when he was a ship captain, and it was like a sea monster type thing, and that was his thing. So his character and that was having like a bit of a flashback scene. So that was really something that happened indirectly, but it was through my description. Like I said, I wish I could claim that I did that on purpose, but it just happened, it was cool. And it was cool to see some of Matt's character come out, his backstory come out. So, but that he can't, like, he hits that thing and it doesn't do anything to it. So Hugo then decides that he's going to destroy the watch, and Niklas is running around and he's lighting sage and stuff and trying to do get that burning so it can hopefully maybe affect the spirit somehow. So Hugo finds a couple rocks. He finds a flat rock. He puts the watch on it, and then he finds another rock, and and he tries to smash it. And the first attempt is unsuccessful. And while that's going on, actually just before that happens, when Niklas is burning sage, another set of vines reach up and grab him, and he can't resist them, so it picks him and it smashes him into a large fountain, and it pushes him into the murky water below, and it's like thrashing him in there, trying to drown him. And when that happens, in that mess, Niklas is able to see suddenly the body of the corpse of a boy, and it's the missing boy, Elias Wallen, that Elsa told them about. And he's being held under in this murky water, and this corpse is right on top of him, and he can't get out. So then Hugo is trying to smash the watch, and he hits it with this rock, but he doesn't even scratch it. But that draws Lars's attention, and Lars realizes what is happening, and he is connected to that watch. That is his link to this world, keeping him in this world. So he lets go of Niklas and turns to focus his attention on Hugo. Goran steps in at this point. This is a really cool, first major combat in the game. And Hugo steps in to block this vine coming in, and he swings his saber, and actually is successful, and chops off a large chunk of it. And Niklas comes over, climbs up out of the mess, and he is going to help Hugo try to smash it. So they get a bigger rock, and they bring it down, and they're able to smash it. And when they do, Hugo's ghostly apparition form appears, and it starts to like do this frantic like fluttering and fluctuation as pieces are coming off, and as the pieces come off, they dissipate into nothing until he's eventually gone. The vine that's holding Elsa collapses, and she is hurt. Like the vines had wrapped around her torso and her arms, and at one point like constricted on her, so the thorns were like ripping through her, but she's still alive. And they get her inside the back inside the castle, into the library, and Lars Berg, the ghost of Lars Berg, is banished. They realize that the corpse that Niklas saw is the corpse of the missing boy, Elias, and they contact the police, which was interesting. I wasn't sure if they were going to do that. I actually don't know if, as a player, if I would have done that. I might have just buried that somewhere to not draw our attention to the castle, but they chose to do the right thing, and they called the police. So a detective, Forsberg, arrives with a host of policemen and takes their statements. And there's a little bit of exchange there. They try to, they're not telling them that there was a ghost. They tell them they were cleaning the fountain, and they found the corpse. And Goran's doing most of the talking with the others chiming in. So they try to manipulate the detective into believing their story, and they weren't. It was kind of like they weren't 100% successful. So he's a little bit. It was apparent that he was a little bit suspicious of what they were telling him, but he had no evidence to prove otherwise. And that he did make mention of keeping an eye on them and stuff. So they kind of took that as the unveiled threat that it was intended. So they end up nursing Elsa that night back to health, and she has no recollection. She didn't see a ghost or anything like that. She just remembers the darkness, and then being pulled away, and then nothing. So they kind of feed her a line too, like they manipulate her a little bit into a story of Goran comes up with some story about maybe because it's an old castle, there was a methane, a gas or something that affected her or something. So and they rolled pretty well on their manipulation, so that BS story actually was a little bit more effective. But they've kind of made a connection and a relationship with Elsa, so they'll probably see her again the way they left it. She actually spends the night at the castle, and then they spend that time nursing her back to health and getting her back on her feet and patching her up. So the session after that, we talked about some time, like a couple weeks passed, and they get Algot, their butler, after serving the evening meal, comes in, and he has a letter for them, and it's an invite to this thing called Dance of Dreams, and it's basically this invitation to this place sort of thing. And it's and Dance of Dreams is an adventure that's in the core book, and I'm going to be running that next. And the letter is signed. It says, "Meet me tonight at the Witch Cat Inn," and it's signed Olas. So they agree that they should do that, and that's where we ended the session. Really good session. I had a lot of fun playing it. This is like the 7th time I've played Vaesen, and the 2nd time I've actually been a game master for it. I really like it so far. We haven't mastered the rules by any stretch of the imagination, but the rules are. It's not heavy. It's like a rules. It's a very rules light game, which I like. The rules don't get in the way of the game, so it's a lot of fun. Like a lot of stuff, like the whole darkness and Elsa being pulled away and vines and all that stuff. That was all stuff that I just made up as we went. Like that came to me as we were playing, and they were touring her around, and I wanted something to happen to move the game into the next scene. And you don't get hung up in a lot of like crazy stats and statistics and stuff. So really good game. Can't wait to run it again. We'll be running Dance of Dreams, and we'll see what happens next. But yeah, that's a recap. If any questions about Vaesen, I'll try to answer them. Like I said, I'm not an expert. If you haven't checked out Vaesen and you're looking for a really cool horror game, I highly recommend it. Any of the games by Free League are awesome. And I'll catch you at the next one. Thanks for watching.